Hi everyone, this is OCD Live. My name is Greymond, and let's get to some questions. Okay, we'll do this one. The first question, how can I not panic if I'm not sure if the thought is true? So, okay, let's go back to why you are getting scared by the thought. The thought goes against everything you think, everything you believe, and goes against your core values. It really scares you. Every time the thought comes into your mind, it scares you. And not only the thought scares you, but also the possibilities of what would happen if the thought is true. Like you would lose your whole life, you would lose your family, you would lose this, you would lose that. So when you get the thought now, what you have to do in order to recover, because before you got the thought and you were doing reassurance and trying to go over the thought, and that just makes the thought worse. So how can you not panic if you're not sure if the thought is true? You basically have to go back to how many times you've had this thought and say, I've had this thought a million times before, somewhat different, but really the same thought, because the worry was the same, the thought was just slightly different scenario, but basically the same, and it never turned out true. And in every one of those times, you felt like it was extremely real, extremely valuable, or extremely valid rather, and you thought it was true and you worried about it just the same as you're doing now. So just by that the thought is not relevant, that it's just an OCD thought, because real thoughts, you're never going to worry if the real thought is true or not. You're just going to know that it's true and you're going to go from there. You won't have a doubt. The fact that you're having a doubt, a what if, already tells you it's OCD. Also, it follows the same theme. These are the telltale signs that this is an OCD thought. And you don't need to go any further. What you should not do is try to solve it. So when the thought hits, just take a breath, say, this is my regular thought. I am choosing not to panic. So you may feel like you need to panic, but it's a choice. You can either say, I'm choosing to panic, or you say it anyway. You just don't consciously say it, but subconsciously you still make a choice whether to pay attention to something and panic or not pay attention and not panic. It's like, for example, I'll give you an example in a different situation that you're not emotionally close to, so you can kind of understand what I'm saying. Two people are faced with the same situation. For example, a mother and a baby are in a grocery store. Okay, the baby has a soother in their mouth, right? And suddenly the baby drops the soother on the floor. Mother A panics and puts the soother away. Mother B just wipes the soother and gives it to the baby. Okay? So that's a reaction to the same situation. You can panic or you cannot panic. It's just different people have different reactions, right? But your reaction to your OCD stimuli is not accurate in proportion to the stimuli. No, but you know that nobody else would worry about this. The person, you guys who are listening to me, right? That I don't know your situation, but I can tell you based on all of the situation I've ever heard and my own situations as well with OCD, right? That it's never ever true and it's never ever valid, and nobody else would worry about it to the extent that you're worrying about it, So that's already enough for you to say that I'm choosing not to pay attention. And you can see that everybody else is choosing with the same situation. If they were faced with the same situation, they're choosing not to pay attention and you are choosing to pay attention. So it's a choice. And I think a lot of the times people kind of, even I get kind of a lot of negative comments about the, choosing the panic, because people say, well, I get it and I don't have a choice. No, but I've been through it myself, okay? You get the urge to panic. You choose whether to panic and check and all of this, or suppress the urge by switching what you're doing, switching your surroundings, trying to keep your mind busy, giving it something else. So it's a choice. And and that's where your main kind of weapon against OCD comes in, is recognizing it as a choice and taking action. Because in that moment, your mind is really looking for what you're gonna do. So this is kind of like your moment to shine type of thing, right? Where your mind says, okay, what are you gonna do now? And if you just like, panic, start to cry, start to, get more and more into the thought, then you're just gonna feel worse, because the mind will think, well, not really, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, but it's gonna take that to interpret that the thought is valid, because you're panicking about it. So you wouldn't be panicking about a non-valid thought, so that must mean the thought is valid to your mind. That's your mind's reasoning, because your mind doesn't actually have the ability, that part of the mind, the amygdala, doesn't actually have the ability to judge the thought just by itself. So like on an emotional level, on a spiritual level, on, are you a good person level, all this, it can only judge the thought by your actions. So it sees, okay, this person is protecting themselves. That means the thought equals danger. This person is not protecting themselves. This means the thought is not danger. And just like I gave the example earlier in the show with, if you didn't listen, just to kind of reiterate, right, that two mothers are in the store with their baby, right? And the baby drops a soother from their mouth on the floor. One mother wipes it off, gives it to the baby. The other one puts it away because it's dirty. So one mother cares like a lot, right? And the other one's kind of like, you know. So, and that's the thing. So there is a choice being there. The thought came in that, oh, what if the soother is dirty? To both mothers, what if it's got some sort of, scary bacteria? But one mother thought, forget about it. And the other one thought, no, I better kind of be safe. So there is a choice there, but they just got it on a very minuscule level, right? Like they don't get the level of anxiety when the thought first hits. You do, but you still do have a choice, even though you get that level of anxiety. And it's important to recognize that choice and start to kind of take back the power. And it's, it's little bit by little bit. It's not really all at once, like, just take a little bit of maybe try to not think of it that much, and just less and less and less and less, as much as possible, and you'll see how much you're improving. Because the next time this thought is going to come in, it's going to be a lot weaker if you disregarded it last time. So it's all about every time you're doing the same thing, you're kind of drumming it into your mind that these thoughts are not important, I am moving forward, and just keeping going like this over and over and over and over again. Okay, so next question. Why is asking for reassurance such a bad thing for you? So when you're asking for reassurance, and reassurance is present in all OCD. And actually, I'm gonna answer the next question as well. Is what qualifies as OCD reassurance? So actually, let's do that one first. So OCD reassurance is any action that you do to prevent the negative outcome of the thought that you get for OCD. So if your thought is, say, I'm afraid that if I drive, I'm gonna hit somebody, because I always get this kind of thought that I'm driving and I hit something like a curb or something, and then I think it's a person. Okay, so if that's your usual thought, then your reassurances would be avoiding driving, or driving, in a way where you can track how you were driving. So either driving with somebody, or recording yourself while driving, or driving with like taking pictures or making a video, or just doing something that will make you feel safe, while driving. So if you feel like you get a thought, or if you feel like you hit somebody, then you have like a plan B kind of idea. So anything like that is reassurance. And avoidance is also reassurance, because avoidance is just reassurance paid forward. Instead of reassuring yourself after you've had a scary thought, you are avoiding the thought altogether and reassuring that you don't get the thought. So it's really the same thing. There's also reassurance from others. There's also online research. So in the case of, say, driving, the person would ask everybody they know, what if something, right? There's internet research where, you could check like news or whatever, say somebody was, hurt in the area or something like that. Um, there's also going back to the situation mentally, like thinking, well, how was I driving? All of this stuff. And this is not, I just give you the driving example because it's a very, very common OCD, and it's always, I talk to so many people about driving OCD, and it's always the same exact thing, same exact thoughts, same exact fears. So it's an easy one to kind of explain because it's very kind of clear cut. But no matter what your OCD thought, anything you're doing to make yourself feel safe from the fear, from the unrealistic, unlikely fear, is reassurance, and it's sending a message to your mind that the thought is important, that the thought is relevant, and that your mind needs to send you more of the same thought in order to protect you. So, and in turn, obviously that makes OCD worse, because the more thought your mind sends, the more times you get a chance to react correctly or react incorrectly. And most of the time, if people are reacting with reassurance, they're doing so all the time, like continuous basis. So they'll react to one thought with reassurance 2 times, 3 times, and it becomes like a snowball effect where, they sometimes think back that, like, well, last month I only got this thought a few times, and now it's just coming into my mind all the time, all day long. That's because you're doing reassurance. And the worst reassurance to do is self-reassurance. Because self-reassurance is the type of reassurance where you can get it all the time. So you don't need to ask anybody. You don't need to, kind of do any kind of research. You just think back to the situation. So, the more you do this and the more you seek reassurance, especially self-reassurance, the worse you will feel. And the way to get out of this, even whether you're feeling bad right now, or if you don't really have a thought right now, but you will get one at some point, is when the situation comes up and you're getting that urge to seek reassurance, get yourself occupied with something. So get your mind moving, because your mind is like a computer. It doesn't have the ability to reason like your soul, like real you does, okay? So it's looking for your reaction. At the same time, it's also looking out for other kind of scary situations, such as, for example, say if you're in a room, okay, and you're worried about your thought, and you're just laying in bed, just constantly worrying and crying and whatever, okay? And then you get out of the room. Some person comes up to you, or like a family member comes up to you, asks you something, not about OCD, but just generally, Then you go watch TV or see something else, something on the news. Oh, this is happening. Then somebody's calling you. All of these things your mind has to keep track of on top of your OCD. So it's going to give you a much easier time with your OCD, because it simply can't focus all of its energy on it. But if you stay in the room, it's got all of the attention to give to the OCD, so you're going to have a really hard time. So get yourself out there and get busy with stuff, And especially, I really recommend going outside if you're inside, because first of all, there's always a lot of stuff going on outside. There's cars going by, there's people going by, and I find that sunshine also really helps kind of put a person in a different state of mind. Because inside it's darker, generally speaking, right? It's not as, just something happens, I don't know exactly what it is, and you just kind of have to trust me on that. But in my experience of talking to clients and in my own experiences, when you go into the sunshine, your mind kind of clears. Maybe not fully, maybe not all the time, but you do feel slightly better. And that's what we're looking. We're looking to slightly reduce the reassurance, slightly feel better by going outside, slightly better by doing some meditation. And all of these slightlys and all of these constant efforts that you're going to put towards your recovery every day are going to equal to one full recovery. It's about very kind of consistent little steps each day, and trying to kind of top the next day top the previous day the next day, right? So if you did some reassurance yesterday, try to do less today. So say, like, count how many hours you were worried about your thought if you're doing mostly like self-reassurance, right? Was it, say, 5 hours? Okay, try to cut down to 4 hours, because your mind sees you resisting, and the more it sees you resisting, the less importance and less of a kind of flag it puts on this thought, you know? And in that, what that does is that it pulls the thought further away from, the front of your mind, so it starts to become less relevant. Like, think of it like this: when you have an OCD thought, your current OCD thought, the other ones go in the background. They go in the background not by accident. They go in the background with the main reason is because you stopped paying attention to them, but you did it for the wrong reason. You focused on a new thought, you know? You didn't have to focus on a new thought. You could have just focused on your real life. But because you focused away from those thoughts, whatever it is that you focused on, you stopped getting those thoughts. That is all there is to it, you know? And sometimes, it's also because of reassurance and you just solved the thought or whatever. But the times where you didn't solve the thought and the thought just kind of faded is because you stopped paying attention to it. So consciously, subconsciously, but you did, and that's why they faded. And just like this, you can make this one fade. And then when you make this one fade, you have to make sure that when the new thought comes in, you're doing less reassurance, so it sticks to you less, so you have easier time in your recovery, and so on and so forth until they're eliminated. Because your mind is not your enemy. It feels like it right now, but it's really not your enemy. All it's trying to do is protect you. If you show it that there's nothing here to protect against, it's gonna stop this thought. It doesn't need to hold on to it. It doesn't even understand what it's holding on to. So there's no emotional connection from your mind to this thought. There is an emotional connection from your soul to this thought. And that's what you have to drop, because the thought is irrelevant. And, to this extent too, that you have to understand. I talk to a lot of people, as you know, all the time with the recovery program. And every person I talk to, almost every person, worries that they're a bad person because of their OCD. The only time is like when there's something that's like a really kind of strange type of OCD where being a bad person is not really what the main theme is, So sometimes, but that's very, very rare. Most of the time, a person is worried that sometimes there'll be a situation where the person worries about something that's out of their control, and in that way, being a bad person is not part of the equation at all. They're just worried that somebody else maybe is a bad person or something like that. But most of the time, it's the person that they worry that they're bad and that they're not worthy of anything, and they feel ashamed and they feel guilty. And I'm telling you that everybody experiences the same thing. Oh well, almost everybody experiences the same thing. So your situation is in no way unique, and you need to really focus on not paying attention to the feelings that the OCD sends you. So it's sending you guilt, fine, who cares? It's sending you shame, fine, who cares? Because it's sending you that based on a false premise that the thought is true. So just like it's sending you anxiety based on the premise that the thought is true, it's also sending you all of these other thoughts of guilt, shame, whatever, all, not thoughts, but like feelings. So it can even give you physical sensations. That's the kind of the problem with OCD, is that it's in the mind, and the mind kind of controls the whole body. So it can give you anything because it thinks the thought is true. So whatever, depending on the type, say for example, you have something to do with like a medical condition that you worry about, and you have already done the research, which you should know, but you've done the research about what are the symptoms of this condition. And you start to take a look, and you start to feel that, oh yeah, my throat does feel a little scratchy. Oh yeah, my nose it does feel stuffy. Oh yeah, I do kind of feel achy. Because the mind can actually create these symptoms. So you can't pay attention to it. Don't take it seriously, because that's where a lot of people I see fail, where they think that I'm a bad person and all of this, and they start to get into the thought, and just, it just keeps on going for them. So avoid that mistake. That's one thing you could avoid, is avoiding that mistake and just saying, who cares if I feel guilty? Who cares if I feel like I'm a bad person? Who cares if I feel like I'm ashamed or whatever, or how could I, be like that, or, and again, that's another thing, is that means you're going into the details. And the more you go into the details of the thought, like what happened, all of this stuff, the worse you will feel. So really need to pull yourself out and say, you know what? Even if you were seeking reassurance all the time before this, right now I am done. No more. I'm not dealing with this anymore. And just pull yourself out of it. I mean, nobody else could. I'm here for you and I can show you the door, but you have to go through it. You have to pull yourself out of it. And I'm telling you, the best way is to keep busy. But at the same time, also, like we talked about in one of the other shows, is you want to keep busy, but you don't want to stress your mind out any more than it's already stressed out. So find the balance between being busy and being stressed because you're taking on too many new projects. So I would say that be busy in a social life, even though you feel like, like a lot of people feel like they're a fraud, like they're trying to fit in and be happy while everybody else is happy, but they don't feel happy, so they feel like they're lying to themselves, to other people. Everybody I talk to, pretty much, who does the exposures feels like that. I felt like that, So you have to keep going until you feel better. And I'm telling you that if you keep going day after day, you will feel better. And not paying attention to the thoughts or the feelings. By the way, guys, if you have any questions, please put in the chat window and I'll answer them as soon as I get them. Oh, okay. And then the last question I wanted to address today, and this kind of, I already went over it, but no matter what I do, I don't feel better. Why is that? And that is exactly why, is that you're seeking reassurance somewhere. So find out where that is, and like just kind of think back to find out, okay, where am I doing the most reassurance? Half the time, if not more, it's self-reassurance. Sometimes it could be like compulsions or things like that as well, or it could be um, like seeking reassurance from others. But most of the time, it's just going over the situation, like playing it back again and again and again. That's what usually kind of happens. So find the behavior and correct it. So if you think that you're, say for example, talking to other people too much about this, then stop talking to them. You're not benefiting them, you're not benefiting yourself. If you're doing like online research about your topic, stop doing online research. So, and then if you're thinking back too much and you're having a hard time with that, that is usually the hardest one to deal with. I would say keeping busy, like pleasantly busy, like go out, have fun with people, take up a hobby, just do something that makes you feel good and keeps your mind occupied. Take up a course, in something that you enjoy. Here, right now, it doesn't matter really what you do, as long as you give yourself some new experiences so your mind grabs onto something new and is forced to deal with something new. So, but that's what it is if you feel worse today, you were doing reassurance the day before in some way, or avoidance, which is still reassurance. So figure it out and then see if you feel better the next day. So make the changes today and see how you feel tomorrow. You should feel better tomorrow. So OCD is like that. The one good thing about it is it's very logical. It's easy to predict how the person will feel based on the reaction they're currently having to the thoughts. So, if a person is crying and, worrying about the thought, it's going to take a few days for it to go away because they're having such a strong reaction, right? At least a few days. If the thought is like fresh and they just react like that, it'll take a few days to go away because they're just making it so relevant in the mind. So always try to, as soon as you realize you're doing it, because that's another thing. Sometimes people don't realize they're doing that. So as soon as you realize you're doing self-reassurance, then try to pull back. Oh, this is a good question too. What happens if you go out and hang around people who do things that trigger OCD? Okay, so that's actually a good thing because the more times your OCD gets triggered, the faster your recovery will be as long as you react correctly. So prepare yourself before you go. Like, okay, I'm going, for example, let's see, okay, so say for example, if you have cleaning OCD, right? Like contamination, that kind of a thing, okay? And you go to a party and everybody is going to be drinking from like glasses and who knows whose glass it was and all of this kind of, when people get drunk kind of idea, okay? So you think, okay, I'm going to this party, this is what's going to happen, I know it's going to happen. When it does happen, I'm going to choose not to react. That way you're preparing for the situation. It's like a good analogy, well, kind of more kind of bigger analogy to this would be that if somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night and you don't know obviously you don't know they're coming, uh, you're not going to react as well as if you knew they were coming, right? So same thing here, be prepared, know that you're going to get triggered, and then you will be okay. Yeah, you just basically the process. Do I just ignore it, and will you recover fast by ignoring because it's hard? Um, yeah, yeah. You watch them, kind of do things that you're not comfortable with, and just ignore it. So, and it's good, it's good to be out and seeing real average people doing real average things that are not by the book, that will trigger your OCD, because that's normal human behavior. And OCD kind of expects perfection. So, and sometimes when you have OCD long enough, you stop kind of understanding, well, what is normal? Well, is it normal to do this, or how do other people react to this? So it's good for you to be around people to see, okay, like, I mean, just like I gave the example with the two mothers being in the, in the store, right? Like, yeah, the soother's dirty, probably not the best idea to give it back to the baby, but if the mother is frazzled and all of this and could not, just this time doesn't care and doesn't want to hear the child screaming, you know, that's the choice she makes. But see, there's no, when you're watching this kind of stuff, when you're participating in this kind of stuff, you're getting away from perfection, and therefore you're kind of squishing the OCD. You're pushing it out. While if you're following perfection, although yeah, you're following the rules and all of this, at the same time you are getting yourself deeper into the disorder. I hope that answers your question. Thank you again for being here today. So I guess we'll end here, and I will see you guys tomorrow. If you need more information, you can always visit youhaveocd.com. I have books for sale, I have private sessions with me, and I have some free articles there as well. Also, I have apps on the for iPad and iPhone. I have books that are available on Kindle and on iBooks. Again, thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.